The reading this morning is from the book of Matthew, chapter 10. He who receives you receives me, and he who receives me receives him who sent me. He who receives a prophet in the name of a prophet shall receive a prophet's reward, and he who receives a righteous man in the name of a righteous man shall receive a righteous man's reward. And whoever gives 1 cup of water to these little ones, only a cup of cold water in the name of a disciple, assuredly, I say to you, he shall by no means lose his reward. The Lord's word.
Good morning. So this morning we have a beautiful family that's come from Texas. And so I've assured them that I'm not the regular preacher. So if they don't like it, they will come back next week. And Brian is here with us, our new preacher. You don't have to say anything, but just stand up where they can see you. So this is Brian. Some of you may not have met him. So he's coming in August, right? So he's here looking for a house. He's kind of slipped in like a ninja, and he's from Texas too. So there's probably nobody left in Texas. Yeah, the Republic of Texas, right? So in my youth, my grandparents were committed to the idea of having family reunions, and those of you in this group are part of that cohort, I think. And we don't seem to do it anymore. You know, now that Pam and I are grandparents, we don't make anybody come to reunions. But our grandparents did. It was important, and they stayed connected to the family. And I remember my mother was always somewhat put upon. I mean, she liked it, but her mother was one of the ones that made you go, so she had to do what her mother said. And she was put upon, not because she didn't like her people, but she had to make a dish. We had to travel somewhere. It's like when we have a supper here, we don't have to go so far, we live here. But in those days, you had to go someplace. It was hot. There wasn't any air conditioning. There wasn't air conditioning in the car. All of that. All the children had to have on the right clothes. She tried hard to remember everybody's name that she was supposed to remember. I had no obligation because I was a child and I didn't know anybody. And it was super hot. For me, I just got a few new kids to play with. They were supposed to be my cousins. And somebody showed up, and it was boys and girls, and we ran around and did what we did. In my case, I got fried chicken, deviled eggs, and lots of dessert. What could go wrong? So my mother's family reunions were in a place called Everett Springs. So Everett Springs is in northwest Georgia, about as far northwest as we are northeast. It's just kind of up in the corner of Alabama and Tennessee, kind of. And that's where Mama's people were from. Her parents were both one of 14 children apiece. So they had, of the ones that thrived, actually. But Mother's maiden name was Everett, and so there you go. There was a spring there. It was called Everett Springs. Our venue for this was a Masonic lodge. None of us were Masons, but the Masonic lodge was a big old wood building. It was the biggest room in the community, and it was next door to the most beautiful little chapel you ever saw, wooden white chapel with a little steeple, wood floors, wood pews, no air conditioning. You just got hot, you raised the windows. And below that, there was an old school. And the school was abandoned. It looked like some of the places that we went. It looked like somewhere I'd been. It had broken windows, and it was musty and dusty, and there were old school books laying around, and rattlesnakes and spiders in this place. And it was the greatest fort ever. So really, it was like a castle, and we ran around, and it didn't bother anything. And so we played really hard while the adults reminisced, and then they would holler and say, children, children, come, and so you had to go up there. Next to this old school was an old well, and this is before weed eaters. And so it was pretty rough. It was pretty like knee-high bushes and briars and all that. So there was an old well there, and of course we investigated that. It was surrounded by weeds and vines. And so we wandered up in there, and the floor's kind of falling in. It's got the bucket and a windlass. It's got a roof over it. Pretty dusty. So we're city children. We don't know. So, but we take the bucket and we drop it in there and we watch it go. It seemed like it goes to China. And it splashes and you see a little reflection. And then we rolled it up and got a spot. And so right there by the well was a gourd. Y'all know about gourds? Yeah. So that gourd may have been there for 30 years. I don't know. No telling who drank out of that gourd. So it was dusty and spider-filled and had algae all at the same time. So you just kind of go, you kind of blow. And so we take, all us kids, and there were different kids every time, and we take that thing and drink that water, and it was so cold, and it was so good. And we just passed it around without regard to COVID or a whooping cough or a hoofing mouth or anything anybody could have had. And the gourd was probably bad enough, but no telling what they had. So it's a miracle that we didn't all succumb. Now we test our wells. In fact, I've tested one twice in the last few years. We didn't get cholera or Ebola or E. coli or any of those things. But it was the greatest water ever. It was so clear and so refreshing, and I still remember that it was just great, and it was in kind of an odd spot. So this sense of the cold, refreshing water is the context for today's scripture. And it's in Matthew chapter 10. Susan read it to you. And so it's in a section, if you have a Bible with notes in it, captions and all that. So at the beginning of Matthew chapter 10, your Bible, if you have notes, is going to say, the sending of the 12. That's what it's going to say. And so this is mid-ministry for Jesus. So this is chapter 10 of Matthew. Matthew has 28 chapters. He's not on his way to Jerusalem for the Passion. He's not on that. It's kind of mid-ministry. And Jesus is giving instructions to his disciples. So for homework, and I think it's on the back of the bulletin. Yeah, it is. You ought to go home and read the whole thing in context. It's not long. It's 42 verses. But we're going to listen to part of it. So this is part of it that you kind of need to know for context. This begins with chapter 5. These 12 Jesus sent out with the following instructions. Do not go among the Gentiles or enter into any town of the Samaritans. Go rather to the lost sheep of Israel. He's not sending them to the Gentiles, the Samaritans, the Philistines, any of that, just the Jews. As you go, preach this message. The kingdom of heaven is near. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse those who have leprosy, drive out demons. Freely you have received, freely give. Do not take along any gold, silver, or copper in your belts. Take no bag for the journey or extra tunic. Pack light. Or sandals or a staff, for the worker is worth his keep. Whatever town or village you enter, search for some worthy person there and stay at his house until you leave. As you enter the home, give it your greeting. If the home is deserving, let your peace rest on it. If it is not, let your peace return to you. If anyone will not welcome you or listen to your words, shake the dust off your feet when you leave that home or town. Pretty tough. I tell you the truth, it will be more bearable for Sodom and Gomorrah on the day of judgment for that town. I am sending you out like sheep among the wolves. And listen to this sentence. Therefore, be as shrewd as snakes and as innocent as doves. Now, these are the words of Jesus. So this is what he's telling the disciples. He's saying, I want you to be as shrewd as snakes, which is kind of interesting. I don't know if you've noticed that in your reading, but I just didn't remember Jesus saying for any of us to be shrewd as snakes, because we kind of don't like snakes. But to be shrewd as snakes, he's saying be smart, and to be as innocent as doves, be open, be friendly, be hospitable. So Jesus is empowering his disciples to go before him and do the kind of things that Jesus does. To preach, to heal the sick, to raise the dead. So this is mid-ministry. So Jesus hadn't been crucified. He hadn't been resurrected. Raise the dead, drive out demons. These aren't instructions after his death, but this is in the present time. So the disciples clearly are not Jesus himself, but he's empowering them 12-fold to expand the ministry. Now, that's kind of cool to me. So he's sending them ahead. So Jesus is the Messiah. No one's like Jesus. He's special, but he's sending the disciples, and he's giving them the powers to do those things. So when he says that if you're not welcome, they don't listen to your words, shake the dust off your feet when you leave that town. So Jesus is telling them to be efficient. So if they go and they're not receptive, they're not to linger around. They're not to beat them up about it. Shake the dust off your feet and move along. And then he says if they're not receptive, it's going to be worse than Sodom and Gomorrah. Well, gosh, God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, and that was awful. So he's saying if they don't listen, move along. So Jesus in chapter 10 is sending them on a short-term mission. They don't say goodbye to Jesus, this isn't it. He's sending them to places that he is eventually going to go. So this isn't after the resurrection where the disciples went all over. He's sending them to places where he's going to go. And we don't really know, some of you Bible scholars, maybe Perry's my Bible scholar. He knows more than anybody. He's sending them places where he's going to go, and we don't really know where they went. We don't know the places or the times or the results, but he's sending them in agency. They become his agents to go before him. So in this light that he's sending these 12 before him, are we also Jesus' disciples? Is Jesus sending us before? Now, Jesus has come. He's been crucified, resurrected, ascended. We're at a different time. But does this admonition apply to us? Should we be telling anybody about Jesus? Should we tell them about our Messiah? How should we relate? This isn't the Great Commission. The Great Commission comes later, and it says, go and make disciples of all nations. So this is a precursor or maybe a supplement to the Great Commission. The cup of cold water. Should you show hospitality to someone whose doctrine is not sound? Not sounds a little judgmental, different than yours. Or maybe they don't have any doctrine. Maybe they're an atheist. Maybe they're an agnostic. Maybe they're just different than you. So the verse again. And if anyone gives a cup of cold water to one of these little ones because he's my disciple, I tell you the truth, he will certainly not lose his reward. So this cup of cold water, that seems pretty simple, doesn't it? So in the Middle East, people practice hospitality. They still do. I know we're at war in the Middle East. I got that. And all the geopolitical thing, there's all kind of confrontation. There's all kinds of problems. I get that. But personally, people in the Middle East are pretty hospitable. Whether they're in Israel, whether they're in other countries, it's personal to them. That if you came along, they would feel like, they don't know you. They would feel like they should be kind to you. And so this cup of water is a metaphor of that. Water then was not easy to obtain. it's a desert. There's some green places too. I got that. But there's not a lot of water. They don't have it on the tap. And so where the water came from is that the women, not the men, the women are put upon, I acknowledge it. The women would go and get the water in the morning in big jars and carry it on their heads or on their shoulder. They do it twice a day. So when they got the water, if they got it out of a well, wherever they got it, it was cold when they got it, but it wasn't cold long. No refrigeration. So to get a cup of cold water that Jesus references is kind of a luxury. So it's easy enough if your well works. So at our house, we've had the well go out about 5 times, lightning strikes. So when you don't have the water, you really appreciate it. But cold water then was a luxury, and for it to be clean. But that's how they rolled, and that's how they rolled in the Middle East. And so we talk about Southern hospitality. They got it in Texas too. So I recognize that as part of the South. If you were from, well, never mind. So showing kindness to others is kind of what the gospel is all about. The Great Commission, the cold cup of water. And it's not about us, it's about them. Do you hear me? And Jesus was admonishing or instructing his disciples about that. It's not about us, it's about them. And so Jesus is glad for the 99 sheep that are gathered in the fold. You remember the story. But it's the one lost sheep that's wandered astray that causes heaven to rejoice when it's found. And so Jesus came into this world on behalf of strangers to the gospel, strangers to Jehovah, strangers to God. Not the home folks. Not for the well, but for the sick. Not for the found, but for the lost. That's why he came. And that's what he's doing with these disciples. And he says, and if anyone gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones, who are the little ones? Is it just the children? It is the children. But it's not just the children. It's those who are in need, those who are the most needy, the ones who are the most vulnerable, the ones who don't have anybody else, no other advocate. This isn't a country club. It's a hospital. It's not a shrine. It's a lighthouse that beckons those to Christ. So it's the people whose lives are on the rocks, who need help, and those who need to be loved, you offer the cold cup of water. So water is interesting to me in the Bible, if you think about it. They were thinking about it, and God was thinking about it. So we have the water, rain for 40 days and 40 nights, Noah and the flood. That was a little too much water. We got the Nile that runs red with blood. In the time of Moses, we got that. We got the parting of the Red Sea, that's water. We have Jesus' baptism at the River Jordan. We have Jesus' request for water from the Samaritan woman. How about that? Now, so could that be a coincidence in light of this? I like the way the scriptures go together. So this is the passage about that. Then the woman of Samaria said to him, "How is it that you, being a Jew, ask for a drink from me, a Samaritan woman? For Jews have no dealings with Samaritans." Jesus answered and said to her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that says to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." The woman said to him, "Sir, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where then do you get that living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob?" It's Jacob's well, "who gave us the well and drank from it himself, as well as his sons and livestock?" Jesus answered and said to her, "Whoever drinks of this water will thirst again, but whoever drinks of the water that I give them will never thirst, but the water I give him will become in him a fountain of water springing up into everlasting life." Now, just the sound of that is refreshing. So Jesus in Matthew is saying, give them a cold cup of water, you have this colloquy between Jesus and the Samaritan woman. She has the regular kind of cold water that comes out of Jacob's well, and Jesus reveals to her the concept of living water that you can only have in Christ. Could that be a coincidence? It's not to me. And so Jesus is teaching his disciples about the same cup of cold water that he seeks from the Samaritan woman. Perhaps a cup of cold water is hospitality, and there's the ethnic difference, the religious difference between being a Samaritan and being Jewish. That's a whole problem. So Jesus is bridging that gap personally in the difference in ethnicities. He's doing that, but he's offering the cup of living water, the kind where you never thirst again. So what is our responsibility as present day disciples of Christ about the water? About the water. Maybe it doesn't mean that you literally give them the water, but it does mean to be hospitable. So those of you who know me and that aren't from Texas, I'm the chaplain at the hospital. And so I have a little dilemma at the hospital. So where we live in the Bible Belt. Everybody doesn't believe, but there's a chance that you grew up and you went to vacation Bible school, that you were raised around a church, or you had a mama or grandmama, somebody that told you something about Jesus. You might not be practicing, but you know about it. So at the hospital, most of the people I have a background in the Christian faith. A lot of them are good church goers. I prayed with one older gentleman who was about 95, and I prayed for him, and he said, "Let me pray for you." And he prayed the best prayer ever. But most of them know a little something about it, but some aren't. So I've had a few to say to me that they were atheists, and that they say it with too much enthusiasm. They're atheists and kind of happy about it. Sometimes, and this is very unusual, it surprised me. We've had some people in the hospital who were Buddhist and Hindus. Not quite so many Muslims, but for some reason, I've got Buddhists and Hindus. And that kind of surprises me. And so I'm not being critical of them at all, but I'm saying that I'm a person of the Christian faith. And so if I'm trying to comfort someone who is a Buddhist, I'm not praying to Buddha or Muhammad or whoever, whatever the choices are. I just can't do it. And I can't do it. I mean, it's a compromise of my faith. And I'll take some advice from you about that. So, but I still go see them. I feel like it's my responsibility to go see them. And I don't mind the responsibility. So what I do with those folks is that I try to let them see Jesus in me the best I can. I encourage them. Everybody that's in the hospital has something broken or they're sick. They're just not there because it's fun. So they feel bad. There's something. So I try to encourage them. I try to love them up. But the one thing I found that I can do, every hospital, and if you've been in the hospital, you know, they issue you some equipment. Every hospital does. You have to pay for it. They don't just give it to you. Everything's expensive. But one of the things they give you at every hospital is they give you a cup for water. And it's like a sippy cup. It has a lid. It's like a sippy cup for a child. And so the people who are downcast, I do it for everybody. But the people especially that don't have a faith, I offer them a cup of cold water. And all I do, it's not hard. All I do is I take their cup, I go down the hall, we have ice machines. I take the cup, I fill it back up, take them a cup of clean water, and I try to let them see Jesus in me. Jesus said, "He who receives you receives me." So when you speak to somebody, when you let somebody see Jesus in you, or if you choose to share the gospel with them, you need to be hospitable. You need to be nice to them. The hospitality is the first thing. Whether you think that when people say they don't want to witness to anybody, it's because they don't know the whole Bible and they're afraid they're going to ask a hard question. I don't know everything. I really don't. But they will know whether or not you're nice to them. They will know that. And if you talk to somebody, if you choose to share the gospel, if you choose to be kind to them, they might not get anything you've said. And I'm not telling you got to witness to them. I'm not telling you got to do the 4 spiritual laws. I'm not telling you that. But I am encouraging you to let them see kindness and Jesus in you. I know a lot of you, and I know that you do, so this is a refresher. We wish to have a life of peace. And our peace is between us and God. That's the peace that you choose to get. The peace between each other is complicated. There's all kinds of resentments, conflicts, differences. You can make a list. So there's no guarantee there's ever going to be peace that exists between all of us, not even those in this room. And all of y'all are pretty nice. But never underestimate the power of a cold cup of water. It's the least gesture of kindness that you can do. And even the swords that divide us can be sheathed by hospitality, by kindness and love. That's who Jesus wanted the disciples to be. We all say that we're disciples. That's who Jesus would like us to be. Kindness to the visitor, generosity to the down and out. If anyone gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones because he's my disciple, I tell you the truth, he will certainly not lose his reward, and you won't lose yours. Amen. This morning we're going to have communion, and we're going to do it a little different, okay? So I'm going to walk down front. When I messed up the camera. When Jesus, at the end of Jesus' earthly ministry, you know that he went to Jerusalem. And all those guys were Jews. They celebrated the Passover feast, the celebration of the Passover that first occurred in Egypt with Moses and the Hebrews so long ago. And every year they celebrated that because they were so grateful to God for delivering them from captivity in Egypt, got them to the promised land. It was a little tumultuous getting out with the Pharaoh, you know, all that story, but they celebrated the Passover. So that's why they were there. Jesus knew that he was coming to be martyred. He knew that. He had told the disciples that over and over again, but it was kind of hard to believe, you know, because he was the Messiah. He had done so much. He had healed people. He had given sight back to people. He had raised Lazarus from the dead. He had done all of these things, walked on water. There's a lot of things he did. I don't even think they're in the Bible. There's just a hint of it. And if we could learn the things in the Bible and let the other go, it would be okay. But he was really quite something. He was supernatural. And to think that his life would be taken by mere humans was a little crazy to the disciples, I would think. So they had the regular Passover, the thing that they did over and over. It's a specialized meal. Some of y'all have done it. It's kind of interesting to do, to see how they do it, and they still do it that way. But at the end of the meal, he took some bread that was a home-baked bread. it probably was unleavened. This has a little leavening in it. And he broke the bread. And I just have a picture in my mind of him in that upper room breaking the bread and looking at each disciple and saying, this is my body that's broken for you. And you've heard that so many times that that's a thing that is regular to you. If you've ever been to church, you've heard somebody say that, but that was new to them. Nobody had, not that they wouldn't break bread in the sense that they would have a meal and break bread, but to say, this is my body that's broken for you was a new way of thinking. And he took a cup with some wine in it, a pottery cup, probably not nearly as fancy as this one, that had wine in it. And he says, this is the blood of the new covenant that's spilled for you, that's given for you. Drink as oft as you may in remembrance of me. And I don't know how they did it. I really don't, and nobody does. Everybody has thoughts about it. Different denominations have really particular thoughts. But Jesus was such a servant that I have the idea that he served this, that he served it to the disciples. And he wanted them to remember this moment and to enjoy this as communion with him, togetherness with him, a bond with him. And that's why we have communion. It's not, sometimes I think we give it short shrift, that it's a thing, you say, oh, well, we're having communion today. And you don't think too much about it. But I kind of want you to think about it. I want you to think about it as relating to God and what God means to you, what Jesus means to you. And think about what those disciples thought that first time. I want you to think about that, okay? So here's what we're going to do. I put on gloves because we're worried about, I don't think Jesus and the disciples were worried about germs then. They didn't know what a germ was, so they didn't know to worry. They probably had them. But I put on gloves, and so we're going to do it a little different. I'm going to go to my left and to your right, and we're going to break the bread. We're going to do it kind of the same way. You're going to come by, you're going to take the bread and dip it in the cup. And while we do that, Sandy's going to play. It might take a smidgen longer, but it'll be okay. Okay? You got it? Okay.